Hello and welcome to Unacademy. Welcome to another episode of Places in News, where we bring for you the various different areas and regions which have remained in news headlines for the past week and a half. And we talk about why those areas have been in news and also discuss the type of questions which can be framed from that particular topic, along with a sample about how the previous year questions have been asked from the same particular topic. Now, if you are liking this initiative of ours, please don't forget to click on the like, share and the subscribe button and put that in the comment section below. Now, as is the case, we shall be discussing with these various different places and we are going to discuss the context, and if you are interested in a detailed PDF note format along with the answers to the questions that we are going to ask and frame in this particular discussion, then you can always join the Telegram channel. Here you will get the notes in the PDF format along with the answers to the questions. Now, without further ado, let us take a look at the topics and the areas that we are going to discuss today. So there have been certain areas and certain particular aspects which have remained in news. So starting with the Northern Sea Route. Now this Northern Sea Route has been in news owing to the fact that India and Russia have arrived at an agreement for the training of personnel to move through the region of the Northern Sea Route. So what is that Northern Sea Route and how is it better as compared to the conventional sea routes which are present? Then SCO meeting was recently concluded in Islamabad, Pakistan. So SCO nations again become important, and these kind of questions with regards to which are the members of the SCO nations, that again becomes relevant, and that is something that we are going to discuss. Then the Nile nations. That is basically owing to the fact of the Nile Basin Initiative with regards to the conservation and sustainable use of the water of River Nile. That has created a certain amount of controversy between Egypt and the upstream nations across the Nile River Basin. So what is that Nile River Basin? Where does it originate? Where does it flow to? What are the various tributaries? And what is the concept of the Nile Basin Initiative? That is something that we are going to discuss. Now, Albania has also been in news owing to the recent deal with Italy with regards to the screening of migrants. Now, that is very, very controversial, but nonetheless, we are going to utilize this opportunity to understand that where Albania is situated, and it is one of those countries surrounding the region of Adriatic Sea. So that is again one of the areas of the PYQ. Then Darfur in Sudan has been in news, and this Darfur region has basically been suffering from a kind of a civil war and an onslaught by the government agencies as well, owing to which you had the UN warning the people of the region and in fact the global community that Darfur can suffer from starvation and is actually suffering from a large-scale starvation issue. Then Roopkund Lake, or the Lake of Fossils in Uttarakhand, is significantly shrinking both in terms of its size as well as in terms of its depth. Why and where is it located? This is going to be relevant even for the portion of your optional studies for geography. Then Halar region in Gujarat. Now what is that Halar region? Where is that situated? Now that has been in news for the Halari Donkey, which is found, which is unique, and that is something we are going to take a look into. And then Srisailam Tiger Reserve is also in news, so we are going to take a look into that as well. Now we are going to talk about the questions which can be framed, the multiple choice questions which can be framed from each of these topics along with the previous year question. I would want you to maintain a basic level of honesty and put the correct answer in the comment section below. The answer to the previous questions that we have held and also the answer to these questions shall be uploaded on the Telegram channel. Now, having said that, let us start with the first region and the first area in news, that is the Northern Sea Route. Now, this had been in news owing to the fact that India and Russia, they discussed the training of sailors for polar navigation and development of joint projects. Now, you see, India had basically agreed to invest in the eastern portion of Russia for the development of Far East in the Russian area. Now, Owing to that kind of a decision, Russia is also keen to seek Indian help in terms of accessing the Northern Sea route. Now, Northern Sea route in simplest of the terminologies is basically navigation and navigating through the region of the Arctic. Now, Arctic and that particular area offers a very shortened sea distance and traversing route, which can shorten the distance as compared to the conventional routes. But then you have to understand that in the region of Arctic, it is not the only sea route which is present. As the image here basically indicates that you have various different sea routes moving through the region of the Arctic. So you have, first of all, the Northwest Passage. This Northwest Passage seeks to move from the region of the Bering Strait and into the region through the Labrador Sea into the Americas. So that is the Northwest Passage, connecting the region of Asia with Americas, the eastern coast of the Americas. Now this again will shorten the route of navigation, which generally the ships take, and the time taken, that will be reduced by multiple weeks. Then you have this as the Northern Sea route moving again from the eastern portion of Asia, northeastern portion of Asia, and then moving through the fringes of the Arctic and then moving into the port areas, for example, Murmansk in Russia, and also the regions like Rotterdam port in the area of Europe, which is a kind of a port of call for Europe. And you also have the transpolar sea route. Now this transpolar sea route is not that very active owing to the freezing cycle in the region of the Arctic. But you know, owing to the factors of global warming, climate change, and also the reality of Arctic amplification. Arctic amplification, by the way, is the phenomena whereby the region of the Arctic is warming at almost twice the rate as compared to the rest of the world. So, owing to this global warming events and climate change events, Arctic is going to remain and is in fact remaining ice-free for a large part of the year. And it is expected, as per the IPCC reports, that by the year 2040, we are going to experience ice-free Arctic for at least 1 month of the year if the present levels of warming continue. Now, this is a particular area which has got a significant benefit in terms of, and even the route when we talk about, it has got a significant benefit in terms of shortening the time period for navigation. Now, that would significantly help the supply chain logistics, but also you have to understand that this is a region which is very, very rich in terms of resources such as natural oil, or rather the fossil fuels, the natural gas and the crude oil which is present. Now, if you take a look at the conventional sea route, let's suppose connecting the northeastern portion of Russia all the way till the region around, or even the eastern coast of China, which is very trade heavy, import-export activities happen there with a great predominance. Now, that ends up covering the region moving through the Strait of Malacca, which is a choke point, and there is heavy amount of traffic which moves through that area. Then moving through the region of Bab al-Mandeb, which again suffers from various different blockages owing to piracy, owing to attacks by militants, and then moving through the Suez Canal, then through the Strait of Gibraltar after crossing the region of the Mediterranean, and then reaches the port cities, for example, as I told you, the Rotterdam port, which is a port of call and the entrant port in the region of Europe. Now, this is a larger distance spanning off across more than 20,000 kilometers with multiple different choke points which are present there. What are choke points? Well, choke points are those narrow channels of the water bodies in the route of international seaway where there can always be a kind of a logjam, there can always be a threat imposed by an enemy member or enemy nation in terms of disrupting the traffic. And that can have a long-term impact in terms of trade and navigation. So while this entire conventional route covers a distance of close to around 20,000 kilometers and more, right, more than 20,000 kilometers, the northern sea route covers that same distance in around less than 13,000 kilometers. So you can imagine an overall saving of or a reduction in distance by around 8,000 kilometers. Having said that, it also passes through the Bering Strait, which can again serve as a choke point, right? But then it does not go through so many different heavy logjam areas. So supply chain logistics, which is a very, very important constituent of maintaining the commodity prices, that is something which is assured. So with the help of Indian sailors and also the Indian merchant companies, you can have, or Russia basically expects, a further smoothening of good transport between the region of Asia and Europe. This can serve to be the shortest route between these regions. So what do you have to know for this particular portion from the point of view of examination? That in the region of Arctic, how many sea routes are available? So there are 3 sea routes which are available. Which are those 3 sea routes available? So the closest one to the region of the Arctic or to the region of the Russian border is the northern sea route. You have in the northern sea route port cities like Murmansk in Russia is one of those ports. Then you have Rotterdam. Then you have Vladivostok. So these are your important port cities in that northern sea route. Then there are other 2 sea routes as well. That is, you have the transpolar sea route which passes through the central portion of the Arctic. It is the least utilized. And then you also have the northwest passage connecting the region of Asia to the eastern part of Americas, moving through the Labrador Sea as well. Okay. Now, let us take a look at the practice question. Now, the northern sea route overall is the shortest viable sea route between Asia and Canada. It seeks to shorten the distance from the conventional connectivity routes by almost more than around 8,000 kilometers. It has got the advantage of not having any choke points, unlike the Malacca Strait and the Suez Canal present in conventional sea routes. How many of the above statements is or are correct? So take a look at the particular statement, read this option carefully, and then put the answer, correct answer, in the comment section below. Then, Shanghai Cooperation Organization has remained in news owing to the SCO meet which was attended by our External Affairs Minister in Islamabad, Pakistan. Now, this Shanghai Cooperation Organization has got 10 member nations. So, the member nations, those are important. Overall, the SCO countries constitute of around 26 countries out there. But when we talk about SCO, so in that SCO, you have the countries are 26. Out of that, you have 10 member countries, member nations. We'll talk about which are those member nations, and then you have 2 dialogue partners. That is, you have countries like Afghanistan, which is a dialogue partner. And then you have 14 countries which are basically having an observer status. Countries like Qatar, countries like Saudi Arabia. Now these are basically having the observer status with the ultimate goal of being a member of the SCO. So when we talk about SCO, so that Shanghai Cooperation Organization is actually a permanent intergovernmental body, international body, founded in 2001 in Shanghai in China. Now, with the admittance of India and Pakistan, the total strength had increased to 9. Now it has increased overall to 10 countries. Now, the prime role of the SCO nations had been basically to fight extremism, terrorism, and increase the cooperation between the Central Asian countries and the larger economies of the region. So you have countries like Russia, China, India, Pakistan, all of these, and the Central Asian countries other than Turkmenistan. Now, this is generally you will find all the Central Asian countries to be a part of SCO, but Turkmenistan is not one of those. And it is easy to remember why. Because when it comes to China, China faces an extremism problem and terrorism problem from groups like ETIM, and that is of Turkey origin or from Turkmenistan origin. So that is why Turkmenistan has never been admitted to SCO, and it doesn't have a chance to be admitted in SCO going ahead into the future. All the countries around Turkmenistan, be it Kazakhstan, be it the Kyrgyz Republic, be it Uzbekistan, all of them are members of SCO barring Turkmenistan. So Russia basically wanted India to be elevated to the level of strategic member, and China then basically proposed that Pakistan should also be elevated to that level owing to maintenance of balance in the region of South Asia. Now, overall, relevant for your prelims, what is relevant for your prelims? The SCO member countries. So, Belarus, India, Iran, Kazakhstan, China, Kyrgyz Republic, then Pakistan, Russia, Tajikistan, and then Uzbekistan. So overall, you will see that Central Asian countries are there. Then you will have the block of Russia, China, India, Pakistan, and Iran. And Belarus is also one of those countries which are a member. So that is the easiest way to remember. Then you have two of the basic observer nations and dialogue partners. So Afghanistan and Mongolia, these are your observer nations. And you have 14, in fact, this 2 is basically the observer nations, and 14 dialogue partners are there. Okay. Now let us take a look at the practice question. So consider the following statements about SCO countries. Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyz Republic, and Turkmenistan are one of the founding members of SCO. Saudi Arabia is the latest entrant to the SCO. Which of the above statements is or are correct? Here, what you can also understand as a kind of a question is the north-south arrangement of the member nations. That can also be important. Okay? Now, then the third topic and the third area, that is River Nile. That had been in news because the Nile nations, they agree on water sharing without Egypt's nod. So which are these Nile nations? So when we talk about River Nile, it originates from the region of the East African Rift, from the region of Lake Victoria. That is where River Nile tends to originate. It is the longest river across the world and basically is responsible for irrigation, agriculture, and civilizational prosperity in the region of the entire Nile River basin. Otherwise, this entire region is very, very dry. So this river originates all the way from the region of Lake Victoria, and basically initially you have the White Nile, then it is joined by Blue Nile. Blue Nile originates from the Ethiopian highlands, and after that it is joined by another tributary of River Nile. So White Nile and Blue Nile, they join, form River Nile, and then it is joined by another tributary, that is Atbara. Now Atbara is another tributary which originates from the Ethiopian highlands. After that, the River Nile moves northwards and then empties into the region of the Mediterranean Sea before forming a large prosperous delta. Very agriculturally, very productive. Now, if you talk about the River Nile, this has always been enamored and always been riled up in a lot of dispute between the countries like Egypt and the upper riparian countries like you have Ethiopia, then when you talk about countries like Uganda and so on. Because Egypt basically suspects that countries like Ethiopia, they are building the dams, which they are. Ethiopia has built a dam on the river Blue Nile, and Egypt basically is worried that the availability of water across the Nile River channel, that will be reduced, impacting cultivation, agriculture in that area and impacting the larger population as well. So, the basin of River Nile includes part of Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, Kenya, Uganda, Sudan, South Sudan, Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt. So these are the countries of the Nile basin. So it has got three major tributaries, that is Blue Nile, White Nile being the major ones, and then Atbara, which joins the river at the last. Now, The Nile Basin Initiative, what is it? So it was launched in 1999 for the sustainable utilization of the water of River Nile and ensuring the socio-economic development by fair use and shared benefits of River Nile. Because once the upper riparian countries, they start building a lot of dams, then the countries in the lower course, they will be devoid of the availability of water. So that is why this Nile Basin Initiative had been arrived at. Now, it is a collective work of 9 countries that share the Nile River, including downstream countries like Egypt, Sudan, and upstream countries, which are the rest of them, that is Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, DRC, and Eritrea participating as an observer nation. So these are basically the countries of Nile Basin Initiative. Now, they have been in news owing to the fact that the regional partnership that has said that an agreement regarding the sustainable use and utilization for River Nile, that agreement has been arrived at. Now, Egypt has not participated in that agreement, right? So, overall, Ethiopia, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, and South Sudan, they have basically agreed to that sharing agreement and utilization agreement. Kenya has not yet deposited the ratification agreement, and Egypt and Sudan, they have declined to sign the agreement, while Congo has abstained. So here, for your prelims, in simplest of the terms, what is required? You are required to know the countries across the River Nile Basin. What is that Nile Basin Initiative? The tributaries of River Nile, where does it originate from? So it originates from Lake Victoria, empties into the region of Mediterranean. What is the purpose of the Nile Basin Initiative? That is also relevant. Okay. Now, let's take a look at the practice question. The river originates from Lake Victoria and flows northwards before emptying into the Gulf of Aqaba. Blue Nile joins the river at a later stage than White Nile. Ethiopia, Uganda, Rwanda, and Kenya, they form a part of the Nile River Initiative. Okay. So, how many of the above statements is or are correct? Only one, only two, all the three, or none of the above. So, that is something. Again, take a look at it carefully and mark the correct answer. Put that in the comment section. Then, other region which was in news is the country of Albania. Albania has been in news because Italy has signed an agreement with Albania with regards to the admittance of the asylum seekers. Now, various different countries of Europe, they have been facing and experiencing an inflow and a significant amount of increased inflow of refugees and asylum seekers. Now, they are hitting a kind of a limit in terms of the number of people that they can admit. So, that is why Italy signed an agreement with Albania, which exists outside of EU, that Albania will be one of those screening centers for the refugees and the asylum seekers. And there, the people who arrive at Albania with the help of, let's suppose, boats and other means of transportation, they will be screened. And every year, the Italian officials will allow asylum or will provide asylum to certain number of people. Now, this has basically been cited and has been deemed by many of the Human Rights Watch as well as various different particular groups and NGOs as harsh on the asylum seekers. That asylum seekers are being dealt as commodities and they are simply being thrown from one country to another. So that is why Albania has been in news. Now, what is relevant for your examination? One is obviously this treaty which has been signed between Italy and Albania. Other is the location of Albania. If you take a look at location of Albania, it is situated close to the region of the Adriatic Sea. So again, associated with any particular water body, which are the surrounding location around the Adriatic Sea. So Adriatic Sea lies to the east of the Italian peninsula. This is where you have the Adriatic Sea. Now here, this is connected with the Ionian Sea by the Strait of Otranto. So Strait of Otranto provides a passage from Adriatic to the Ionian Sea. Now, this entire region is said to be a remnant of the ancient Tethys Sea, which eventually got upfolded and formed Himalayas as the Indian plate collided with the Eurasian landmass. So this is one of those ancient water bodies which are present. Now, around the region of Adriatic Sea, you have countries like Albania, then Montenegro, Bosnia and Herzegovina, then Croatia, Slovenia and Italy. Now, this is marked from one end by the Gulf of Venice and from the other end by the Strait of Otranto. Now, UPSC had asked a previous year question associated with this as well. Now, what was that question? The question was about match the following. So, consider the following pairs, the sea and the bordering country. Adriatic Sea, Black Sea, Caspian Sea, Mediterranean Sea and Red Sea. Which of them are correctly matched? Think about it and mark the answer below. But I will also provide you with a kind of a practice question, the kind of question that you can expect in the examination. Now, UPSC has used this template around Black Sea, for Caspian Sea, for Mediterranean Sea as well. So, which of the following countries surround the Adriatic Sea? Albania, Croatia, Slovenia, Hungary, Italy and Montenegro. Select the correct codes from the option provided below. So, think about it, look at the map and mark the answer, but then overall ensure that you are able to retain the countries in a correct order. Then, Darfur region in Sudan has been in news owing to almost 2 years since the civil war broke in the region of Sudan. Now, this is an area which is not having a lot of resources. It is very, very dry. So, this is your Darfur region in the western portion of Sudan. So, first of all, location of that is relevant. Now, it is in Sudan, by the way, where when we talked about the river White Nile and Blue Nile, they joined together at the region around Khartoum in Sudan and then they moved together. After that, you have the joining of the tributary Atbara. Having said that, this Darfur region has got the Jebel Mara volcanic massif. This is basically of volcanic origin, having a height of close to around 3000 meters. This is very, very dry area. So, agriculturally not productive. And owing to the fact that there has been almost a couple of years of civil war and now recently there has been a government offensive against some of the ethnic groups in that area. So, United Nations has warned the world that people here are dying out of starvation and they are seeking some random things out of nature in order to feed themselves, which is exposing them to various different types of diseases. In the present day and age, starvation is one of those issues of real shame. But having said that, what kind of question can be asked from here? The Darfur region, which area is it situated in, and which are the countries surrounding that area? Why? Can UPSC ask about like this about any particular area? The conflicted regions are in fact one of those that UPSC focuses upon. So, wherever the conflict is happening, you should focus on those areas for the relevance in the prelims examination. If you take a look at this particular previous year question, so consider the following pairs, the regions often in news and the country where they are situated. So, this was asked previously, that is Chechnya, Darfur and Swat Valley, and you basically had to talk about which of them are correctly matched. Let's see if we are able to point the correct answer or not. Now, then certain areas in our country. Now, this is Roopkund Lake in Uttarakhand, which is also referred to as the Lake of Fossils. Now, that has been in news. Now, this Roopkund Lake, which is situated at a high altitude near the Trishul Peak. Now, this is one of those very famous or very used trekking paths and trekking routes. People go for mountainous trek in that area. Now, this is a kind of a glacial lake. First of all, when we talk about the location of this Roopkund Lake, now this Roopkund Lake is situated in the region of Uttarakhand here. That is the location of Roopkund Lake. Now, here, this is also famously known as the Lake of Fossils. Why? Because here you have the presence of various different fossils of different ages, different time period, and many of the remaining bodies, the dead bodies, they also have the flesh preserved, owing to the fact that this is at a very high altitude and experiences very low temperature. So that is why there is a kind of a preservation of the bodies as well. Now, for a long period of time, the accepted belief was that this is a particular area, or this particular lake has got people from the same time period having died in that region in large numbers, and it is a fossil of the same group of people which is to be found there. Having said that, recently you had a group of various different scholars from US, India and different places who contested this known belief that this Roopkund lake actually consists of fossils of different time groups and different time ages, owing to the level of degradation that the fossils have, and also the origin of these fossils. They show different type of descendants and descendants from various different ethnic groups. But having said that, this Roopkund lake is basically shrinking both in terms of area as well as in terms of the depth, and this is happening on an annual basis. Now, what is the reason for it? The reason is associated with climate change. You see, this being a glacial lake, this would experience glacial melt and glacial flow. But in the recent years and in the recent times, owing to increased amount of rainfall and precipitation, there has also been a lot of runoff of sediments being generated. And those sediments, such as the moraine features that you find in the lower extent of the glaciers, those sediments are beginning to get deposited here. So if you can imagine, let's suppose a glacial lake, let's suppose you have a mountainous area, and then here you have a glacial lake. Now, in this particular glacial lake, let's suppose the seasonal precipitation is increasing. Earlier, this region would experience snowfall, but now owing to increased level of warming of the Himalayas, this region is experiencing lot of rainfall, right? Now, this will drain off various different sediments, and those sediments will start getting deposited on the sides of it as well and at the depth of it as well. So owing to that, the depth is decreasing and the size is also decreasing by almost around 0.5% annually. To begin with, this particular lake has a depth only of close to around 9 feet. But then the chances are that, like this, many of the glacial lakes in the region, they are going to shrink, and eventually that also increases the possibility of disasters like glacial lake outburst flood, which is very frequent in the region of Uttarakhand, Sikkim and so on. Okay. Now, that is where Roopkund lake is, near Mount Trishul. Okay. Now, Halar region in Gujarat has also been in news owing to the Halari Donkey. So what is that Halar region? Where is that situated? So Halar region is basically situated in the western extremities of Gujarat. This is where you have the Halar region. Now this is basically bounded by the Gulf of Kutch on one particular side and the Arabian Sea on the other. Now this forms the actual horn of the region of Gujarat. Now this is relevant in terms of the presence of certain grasslands in that area, but has been in news owing to the endangered population of the Halari donkey. The Halari donkey, now this is relevant even for your portion of environment ecology. Now that Halari donkey, which is a very prized possession in these particular areas, now their numbers have started to dwindle owing to the destruction of the habitat, owing to unseasonal floods which drain away and which also claim casualties of many of these donkeys. Now these donkeys, by the way, they are basically different from the rest of the donkeys in that particular area owing to the whitish appearance and also the load bearing capacity. The load bearing capacity is quite significantly high. But even the milk of these particular donkeys is used for making the milk powder, which fetches a lot of value in the international market. That is why some of these Halari donkeys, they are also used for smuggling purposes. So the average Halari donkey is white in color, larger and more resilient as compared to the other donkey breeds. So here UPSC had asked about the camels previously. So here in the prelims examination with regards to where they are found. Similar kind of question can be framed associated with the Halari donkey. So it is an important domestic animal in the semi-arid landscape of Jamnagar and Dwarka district of the Gujarat's Saurashtra region. So within that Saurashtra region, what is that Halar region? This is important for the portion of environment and even for your optional. In optional map pointing also, this becomes relevant. Okay. Now, then coming to the last location and the last topic of the day, that is the Nagarjunsagar Srisailam Tiger Reserve. Now, this has been in news owing to the recent findings by NVSAT 2024, which talks about the largest number of leopard population in any tiger reserve is to be found in NSTR. Now, leopard census had been carried out quite recently, which talked about the fact that in many of the tiger reserves, particularly in the region, let's suppose around Rajaji, etc., there has been a declining trend in the population of leopards, owing to the fact that they basically share the same kind of prey species. So there is a kind of a competition due to which the leopards are being forced out. Now, in the region of NSTR is very, very large, one of the largest tiger reserves that we have in our country, present in the region of Andhra Pradesh, in the state of Andhra Pradesh along the Eastern Ghats. Now, this NSTR offers the semi-arid landscape which is favored by the leopards. That is why, amongst all the various different tiger reserves, this is the one which has got the largest leopard population. But here, we will take a look at the location of NSTR. So, NSTR is situated, as you can see, in the boundary region between Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, extending even in the state of Telangana. Situated across the Eastern Ghats, this is the one which offers the presence of semi-arid landscape. Like this, every particular places in news episode, when we talk about the various different places in news, I hope you are maintaining your own list and your own content about the various different areas and protected areas in news that will ease your burden before the prelims exam. Having said that, when we talk about NSTR, so why it has been in news? So recently released NVSAT's India 2024 report talks about the fact that NSTR has ranked first amongst India's 55 various tiger reserves when it comes to the leopard population, comprising close to around 360 leopards out there. Now, NSTR is located in the Nalamala Hill Ranges, right, which is an offshoot of the Eastern Ghats in the state of Andhra Pradesh. This is the largest tiger reserve in the country, spreading over a large area of close to around 6,000 square kilometer. So, it hosts the largest tiger population where? In the region of Eastern Ghats, not across the country. Amongst the tiger reserves which are situated across the Eastern Ghats, this has got the largest tiger population as well. It is named after the two major dams situated in the region, Nagarjunsagar and Srisailam. There are various wildlife sanctuaries situated in this as well. You have the Rajiv Gandhi Wildlife Sanctuary and the Gundla Brahmeshwaram Wildlife Sanctuary. River Krishna drains this particular protected area. Now, let us take a look at the question which can be framed from this. Now, this can very well be a question not of geography but environment ecology as well. Consider the following statements about the Nagarjunsagar Srisailam Tiger Reserve. It is the largest tiger reserve in terms of its area. It has got the largest number of tigers and leopards in the Eastern Ghats, and it is drained by River Kaveri all along its southern edges. Select the correct statements from the code given below. So, take a look at this question, think about it, that now when you have read about NSTR, it becomes easy to solve. So, like this, slowly and steadily, you will be able to cover almost all the vital protected areas which have remained in news. That brings us to the end of the discussion for this particular fortnight. We meet again after another fortnight on Saturday, where we discuss other regions of Places in News in episode 4. If you are liking this initiative of ours, please don't forget to click on the like, share and the subscribe button and provide your feedback in the comment section below. Now, the PDF along with the answers for the question will be provided in the Telegram channel. The link of it has been given in the initial part of the video. Till we meet again, do take care of yourself. Goodbye. Thank you.